I'm not entirely sure um, how so many people have been inflicted with these mental illnesses, and I don't really care how they have been diagnosed, but like it's gotten to a point where I'm just like, yeah, this is like my face every time I have to like see or talk to one of them. Like, okay, that's great. Yeah, yeah, okay. And some of them will do that to me in an effort to make me feel like they've copied what I'm doing, or they've mimicked how others have responded to them, to me, and their intention is to try to make me feel like I'm the crazy one because they think if they do the same behavioral expressions, it's the same thing as actually being not crazy. Like, you know, when a crazy person is in the room and they see a normal person, their initial instinct or the first thing that comes out of the mouth is to try to call the or imply the other person is crazy. That's the first thing. Like, you'll be, sitting in a room in complete silence, and they can't even keep their hands to themselves, and they'll be like, "You're the crazy one. You're crazy. You're so crazy." Then you'd be sitting there, you'd be like, "Okay, okay, you seem very upset. I'm not really sure why. Okay, yeah, no, yeah." That's the only way you can respond to a crazy person who's freaking out at you because he is crazy. That's the thing with crazy people is like you haven't even done anything to them. Like nothing. Nothing that warrants that type of behavior. And to them because they're crazy, it's justified. And I never understood it. Anyway, I'm gonna segue this into crazy versus criminal. Okay, so crazy or as a I think mentally ill. I don't know if mentally ill is crazy because mentally ill is like it's a temporary state. It's supposedly a temporary state. So if that person has been diagnosed, they should be able to be free from that diagnosis within a certain amount of time with some treatment. So like if somebody was diagnosed with depression, they shouldn't be eligible or qualified to be diagnosable with that condition after seeking and following through with treatment. I mean, there's other aspects to that person's life that may impact their overall well-being. It could include education level or work experience or social relationships. That has really nothing to do with the medical treatment. That's like an individual goal setting. Like they would have to do that on their own. But with medical treatment, it includes therapy. So being able to manage those emotions, learning how to regulate the emotions in an efficient way, um, understanding what is and isn't what isn't appropriate. Also, a big part of therapy is understanding that they are suffering from some sort of illness and they need treatment, just like if they had some sort of cold or something. Like I think the vaccines for mental illnesses would be like the best vaccine I can see is like having a strong sense of morals, or at least being taught a strong sense of morals, and having a good, solid understanding of like reality and society. So basically, education. That's the only thing I've seen. It's not always effective. Like I've seen people with degrees, like PhDs, and um, like like or like high position figures who have been afflicted with mental illnesses. Whether or not they've been treated for it, I'm not really sure. I mean, typically they resign prior to it being public, but it's not always a guarantee that that person won't have a mental illness at one point in their life. But yeah, the difference between a mental illness and a crazy person, I think, is a crazy is like a trait. So like being mentally ill would be like being crazy for a short period of time, whereas being crazy is like an enduring pattern. Typically, those are considered criminals. I don't know if it's the same thing. If somebody's crazy, like they sit down and like have pain all day, I mean, that's unhealthy and also crazy, but I don't think that person would be a criminal for doing so. I mean, I guess technically, legally standing, like if they kill themselves by doing so, then it can be considered criminal, because killing another person unlawfully is murder. So I guess that's technically a criminal. I don't know. The unlawful killing, that's murder. Um, what else? Unlawful, like unjustified or illegitimate killing. Like there's no reason for it, and there's nothing that warrants that murder. Those are what serial killers do, to kill innocent people. Um, with criminals, they're not actually crazy or mentally ill. They're definitely like not the best people to rely on. Their traits would be consistently like it would be dishonesty or like selfishness or greed. Like those would be their traits. Like that would be criminals. But typically they don't do very well in society. Um, it may seem cruel, but some people who have kids who are criminals, like some parents know, they don't really let them out of the house. I mean, I think there's a lot of advocate groups against that kind of stuff who say like they need their own rights and they should be able to go and do their own things, but it's like if they did that, they'd end up in a prison or worse. So that's why parents who are responsible, who have those kids who have like criminal traits, they're very strict towards them. Like not overprotective, like they're actually very, very strict, and they rarely let their kids go out of sight. But that's how I've noticed like how parents treat criminal children. Um, with criminals, what else is different? I mean, it doesn't. The motivations are very clear. So, like with a mentally ill person, it's something else that's affecting their behavior. And that behavior can be prevented and stopped with treatment and medication. That's what the doctors say, right? That's what the psychiatrists have researched on and have found through scientific research that with these treatments and these medications, they can stop this dysfunctional behavior. And I think the backing is that um, these people haven't learned how to appropriately manage these emotions, or they've learned it in a very dysfunctional pattern, either from their caregivers or from their own way of handling a situation in which the caregivers couldn't assist them or any other relatives or friends. So that's how they've learned to handle things on their own, and it's dysfunctional and it's harmful, but they don't know any other way to go about it. That's what they also consider. And I don't know if it's kind of considered mental illness unless it's harmful and hurting the other person. I mean, you could have someone do something kind of like unconventionally, but that wouldn't be considered abnormal behavior. Like, not a lot of people would do that, but I guess you could do that. I wouldn't, but other people would. That would be unconventional. I think most of the time, not always. There are wrong ways to do things, like using your pen to try to hammer in a nail. That's the wrong way to hammer in a nail. Don't use your pen. Use your hammer. And also make sure that you don't like miss and hit your thumb, and then there's like a proper procedure to like hammer it in and everything. I mean, it's not very hard. Some people have difficulties with it if they have never encountered it before and they don't know what that is. Usually people pick it up very easily. You can do a quick Google search and it'll show up how to hammer in a nail. I mean, that's the great thing about internet. they have resources for everything, from cooking an egg to hammering a nail to coding your own mobile software. And it's all there for free. Information is a little jumbled up. Like, before the Google searches were great, now the information is just like, I don't know why they're pulling up these websites. This is so terrible. But yeah. Okay. Criminals. Their behavior and motivations are strictly selfish and self-absorbed, and it doesn't seem like that. And they're not completely like inhuman, right? Like they have preferences and likes, and they do show like flickers of like humanity here and there, but it's always towards a detrimental goal or like a selfish goal, like parasitic. Yeah, selfish goal. It's really not for the other person. It's always for themselves, even if it hurts other people around them. And they know it's not okay, but that's just like type of person they are. Like that's the difference. Like somebody who's upset and starts crying, or somebody who's crying to gain sympathy. Somebody who's upset and starts crying would be somebody who's mentally ill, because if they were upset over something they shouldn't be upset over, right? But somebody who's upset to gain sympathy, they can feign those expressions or pretend to have those expressions. But it's only done so in order to get the other person to feel bad for them, because they know if they respond that way, the other person most likely would respond in a way that would cause them to feel a certain way, right? That's manipulative, right? Those are typically criminals. So that's the difference.